Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Meanwhile, the drama on the House floor continues. Kevin McCarthy failing for the 13th time to get a majority to be named Speaker. But notably, some of the votes today appear to be moving, which is new. We've been stuck pretty much in a deadlock since Tuesday. The latest vote was 214 for Kevin McCarthy, 212 for Hakeem Jeffries, and 6 votes for others. And so, Kim, I wonder if you could catch us up. What's happened? How have we gotten to the point where the momentum seems to be going back into Kevin McCarthy's favor?
Deal making. Deal making is the answer. So what he managed to do essentially is craft a couple of more agreements with some of these holdouts. The biggest one is this controversial question over the motion to vacate the chair. This is essentially the ability of members to call a snap election to oust the speaker. Until a few years ago, the rule was that one person had the ability to call that, and that actually ended up resulting in the ouster of John Boehner, or his essentially resignation in the face of the threat that that motion to vacate would be used against him. When Nancy Pelosi came in, she changed the rules to make it that a majority of the caucus needed to vote to call for a motion to vacate the chair. This has been a subject of debate. McCarthy had lowered the threshold down to 5. That was still not enough for some of these people. So now it's back down to 1. And that did actually make a lot of people happy and was a big part of ending the logjam. There's also some agreements that were made to ensure that individual members have the right to bring some priority bills of theirs to the floor. There was an agreement to try to cap discretionary spending going forward at 2022 levels. The details of all of this are still coming out, but the bottom line is that some of the people who were really the spokesman for the holdouts, Chip Roy, Scott Perry, they seem happy with this deal and agreed that they would vote for McCarthy. So he is now quite close. He does have some holdouts still. The last vote, there were still 6 people who wouldn't vote for him. And that is still not enough to get him up to 218. But I think what's really important here is that, first of all, there's going to be a lot of pressure on a couple of those holdouts to change their minds. And they are people that have not necessarily ever said that they will never vote for Kevin McCarthy. So they are seen as gettable. That's Matt Rosendale and Eli Crane. But also, when you get close enough here, suddenly you can begin to fiddle with the math. So if he is only, say, like a vote away, Republicans could, for instance, have a few people vote present, and that lowers the number of overall votes he needs to actually become speaker so that it is no longer 218. And you could potentially do the math that way. So he may well be on the verge of getting over the line.
But it seems to me that there is an incredible amount of posturing among that group of holdouts. And one person that Kim mentioned, Matt Rosendale, the Montana congressman, is a guy I was going to pick on here. There's been some reporting quoting him as saying that he's decided that he would oppose any speaker nominee who has been part of the House leadership for the last 10 years. So that would include Kevin McCarthy, and that would also include Steve Scalise, notably. And earlier today, when Matt Rosendale was called on during the roll call for his vote, here's how he responded.
Rosendale.
Kevin.
Hearn.
I mean, Alicia, what do you make of that? This is a guy who yells Kevin and keeps the whole chamber in suspense before he says something else other than McCarthy. I mean, are these guys really here in Washington to govern and pass a budget, even if it's a budget that restrains spending in the way that they want, or are they here to get social media likes and retweets?
I mean, I think you got to the rub of the problem, right? Is that these are jokesters. They aren't serious, and they're trying to build a social media following and cultivate a certain base. Maybe they have aspirations to be cable news, hosts or guests, and they're really in it for number one. Many of them, and I don't want to say like they're all this way, but many of them really don't have larger legitimate concerns with how McCarthy's leadership and how the House has been run. I mean, Kim did an excellent column this week explaining yes, there are some legitimate issues with, the omnibus and how that was just jammed through, and spending packages increasingly and the lack of amendments provided. But a lot of them really don't, that's not their issue. I don't think there's any way to really satisfy many of them. It's like Lucy with the football. They're going to continue to move it. And that's, I think, what we're seeing.
Well, the latest is that the House is now voting on a motion to adjourn until 10 p.m. And so, Kim, what may end up deciding this, as far as I can tell, is absences. There are a few people who are out of town. They're going to funerals. They're going to be with sick family members. Apparently, Kevin McCarthy's team thinks that they can get a couple of Republicans back by 10 p.m. and maybe have a vote at 11:30 and get him over the line to be Speaker of the House. But amazing. And if they don't, I guess maybe this will go into the weekend, or maybe next week we'll adjourn and see what happens from there on. But what a fascinating spectacle here in the Capitol as we enter what could be a tumultuous 2 years for this Republican conference.
Yeah, I wouldn't bank on there being an extended adjournment. I mean, it's possible, but I know from talking to McCarthy allies that they're very wary of doing something like that. For instance, sending everybody home over the weekend because of the potential for people to go and then plot and then change their mind. They feel as though they have momentum on their side at the moment. So I would wager that this motion to adjourn, if it proceeds until this evening, that time will be spent really trying to exert some more pressure on a couple of these last holdouts and do some more complicated math, because you don't want to mess this up. Hakeem Jeffries is just a few votes behind McCarthy in each of these, even now that McCarthy is beating him in the total vote totals. But if you get that math wrong and too many people vote present or too many people are absent, you could have a scenario where by accident you put Hakeem Jeffries in the speaker chair. So they've got to do some thinking there. But then I would wager the goal will be to come back, try to do it tonight. But I think that if this time they don't get it on the first vote, they may just stay in and keep voting, because at this point, McCarthy feels he's got the basis he needs to get over the line, and it's a question of wearing down his opponents.
Thank you, Kim and Alicia. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Potomac Watch.